just renewed it today. I know. Just take it. It's hard to be an opposite. You're in trouble. And I'm like, oh no. So everybody likes I check her once in a blue. I do. Thank you. I did it. Because I went to school in okay.
More chairs? Anybody else need a chair? We have a couple that the neighbors I can get, or you can sit there. Yeah.
Oh, that's my chair right there.
Don't get my chair. I know.
Pretty rad.
Can you tell him?
Anaya?
Yeah.
Pretty.
Well, that got quiet quick. Yeah. I guess I was on me. Thank you everybody for coming. My name is Scott Von Heldt. My Sufi name is Sikander. Sikander Scott Von Heldt is who I am. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. This is an amazing turnout. Really way more than I expected, and I feel very blessed that you're all here. Welcome to our home. I hope everyone got something to eat and something to drink. I hope it was good. I tried to make sure I didn't poison anybody. And yes, I did cook it all myself. So anyway, I'll start off. I'm going to go into a couple of different things. Kind of a little bit of background on me. I'm going to try to keep it real brief because it's not really about me. It's not about me as a musician. I've done this, I've done that. That's not what I'm here for. But I think it's good for everybody to know kind of where I come from, what I've done, so that you kind of know that maybe I know a little what I'm talking about in certain areas that I talk about. So I'll go into a little bit about my background as a musician, kind of what Sufism is, a little bit about Hazrat Nayak Khan. I'll try to briefly just blitz over that so we can kind of get right into the first class. And this is an ongoing thing. I'm going to do this once a month. As it grows, we might do it more. I think we've outgrown this location already, so we might have to do it at like a yoga studio or something like that. Yeah, I really appreciate everybody coming. Yeah, to get into a little bit about myself, I grew up in Northern Ohio. I was a son of a church choir director. I was raised in Nazarene, a very strict Christian home. And yeah, music was always a part of my life, you know, right from the get-go. It was always a big thing. And at age 8, I had an experience in church where I really felt the Holy Spirit. I really felt God's presence, and I felt like I needed to go to the altar and do what the preacher said and all that kind of stuff. So I went up and at that time dedicated my life to Christ. That was my path. And I was very serious. I took it very serious. I carried my Bible to school. I listened to only Christian rock, all that kind of stuff. So that was a very strict Christian upbringing that I had. It got to be about 17 or so. My dad did a few things that were questionable in terms of his faithfulness and things like that. And being the church that made me question a lot of things, and especially religion and faith and what it meant to be all these things that I was told were wrong, like Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish or Catholic. You know, I mean, if you weren't Christian and you weren't Nazarene or Presbyterian or something that fit into these boxes, you're doomed. That was what I was told, and I didn't believe that. And I just felt at that time I had to question everything I was taught because it was all being questioned. So with that being said, I got into really studying everything. I studied a lot of different religions, a lot of different faiths, and really in-depth, as in-depth as I would have studied the Bible. And I also at the same time wanted to be a rock star, and I was putting all my effort into all my egoic needs of being a rock star and being like this, big fish in a small town, or a small pond back in Ohio. And eventually I got to a point where I was in such a dark place, emotionally and just physically and spiritually. I just was so far away from what I was trying to really do in my heart with music, because I remembered that moment when I was 8 and that feeling that I had, and I always wanted to use music for a higher purpose, because I felt like it was channeled from somewhere else. Even if I was playing heavy music, I felt like it was a gift that came from God. It was a divine attunement coming through me, whether I wanted to tune into the right frequency and redistribute that or broadcast that or not was to be seen. And I didn't for a long time. So I made the choice to move out here about 12 years ago. I'm from Ohio, and it was not too long after that that I worked at West LA Music, and I was a guitar manager over there. One of the guys in the DJ department was friends with another girl that I was friends with, so it was a friend of a friend said, "Hey, let's go to the Bodhi Tree bookstore. I want you to get this book, The Music of Life by Hazrat Khan." And I was like, sounds interesting, let's go check it out, I'll go with you. So she goes and she's looking through, she finds the book and she's rifling through it, and I'm looking at all the books on the shelf and pull this book out, this very book. Now, I'll try not to get emotional tonight, but I might do a couple times. And I pulled this very book out, The Mysticism of Sound and Music, and I was reading the back of it, just a few little things it said, and I kind of started flipping through it, and it just, I couldn't put it down, and I literally walked around that store like this. Nobody's getting my copy, it was the only one there, and I was like, nobody's getting this book with me. And I bought it, and I read it, and it changed my life. It changed the direction of the course of how I presented myself musically, my whole idea of music. And to back up a little bit, before that I had studied martial arts, and I was very into Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee's style of Jeet Kune Do takes a little bit of each style. It takes Taekwondo, it takes Judo, it takes Karate, it takes all these different things that are useful in your situation, and you use what's useful to you. You don't have to do all these repetitions and all these things. You learn what's good for you and take from it, and I started doing that with my music, and I started really, wow, I love classical music, and I love the sound of strings, and I got this down-tuned 7-string guitar tuned to Q, and it's chug, 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 man, that sounds so cool with strings, so I mean, it got my mind going on this direction of expanding my musical palette, that was the martial arts and all that. And I moved here, discovered this book, and it wasn't long after I just realized that Sufism was a path for me. And to tell you a little bit about Sufism, it really is a path more than it is, it's not a religion. It's an ism, because it's Sufism, but it's not like the isms and anities that we all associate and know with, religion. It's very accepting of all people, of all faiths, of all races, all creeds. As it said in my flyer, it says this in one of our prayers, we make no difference in distinction. And I really just feel that music in general is such a powerful medium. And the unity that I started to see from different types of music and different groups of musicians, and I started kind of seeking out different people, and I saw that there's a lot of people with a lot of artistic and expressive abilities that are very trapped in the usual situation that we get into as artists and as expressive beings. And you don't have to be a musician to be a part of this group, you don't have to do music or art, but I think you all have appreciate music and appreciate what it can do and how it can uplift the soul. And I started to realize that a lot of musicians, you have to work to pay the bills, so you have to take whatever gig comes your way, and sometimes that means learning 20 songs to play at a kid's birthday party, or 10 songs to play at a Genghis Khan for 3 people, which was my wife and my best friend and the sound guy. Those are things that you do, and you question yourself over and over, why, but you have to do that to stay afloat, so to speak. And there's no soul expression through that. There can be, but a lot of times you lose the essence of what really drew you to the music in the first place, or drew you to the art, and drew you, what is it in me that made me want to pick up this instrument and do something with it? And that is a connection to a divine thread that a lot of people forget we have, So this first class, I really wanted to just focus on being a divine instrument and kind of seeing ourselves as a divine instrument. So regardless of what your faith is, what your belief is, what your concept of God is, there is a unified breath, a unified life force and vibration that is here with all of us, that goes through us, flows in and out of us, that connects us to everything. And what really drew me to this message is that all life, they relate all life to sound and vibration. And sound is such a creative force. And when you think about like your voice, I wrote this in my book. I have a book called Mind Over Metal, if anybody's interested. I wrote this in my book. If you're a military drill sergeant, you got to get everybody's attention. So what do? You come in, attention! You put force and brute into your voice, and you let everybody know if you want their attention, you command it. Imagine if you go into your doctor's office and your doctor's like, your tests look great! Yeah! Everything's killer! Keep eating right! And all that, you'd be like, you wouldn't feel comforted. You wouldn't feel like you're, in any way, like, given some sense of comfort. Even though he's nice, he didn't say anything wrong. I walked out there like, my doctor yelling at me. So, that's a broad example, but when you really stop to think about how you use your voice and how you use sound, and what you give off and what other people get from that, it makes you think more about what you put off, what you say, what you do, and it makes you also understand other people more. When I see somebody with a certain attitude or a certain demeanor, I don't take it personally. I don't take it, I try to look at what's beyond their voice, what's beyond the sound, what's coming through the sound. What I hear is that she's a kind person, but she's really having a really crappy day. And she's just, doesn't know how to be kind to everybody in front of her because she's dealing with all this stuff back here, And by understanding sound and understanding the voice and understanding how people communicate better, I think we can unify more. I think we can be better people, better individuals, better instruments. And so, for the musicians in the house, this is kind of a way of seeing that we are an instrument, and we're played. If we really let ourselves be played as an instrument, we set aside our idea and our thoughts of what music is, what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to sound like, what my A&R guy wants it to be, what my manager thinks it should be, what the audience is looking for, what's going to make them dance. All these things just take us so far away from just the power of what music can do when you just let it flow, So that's really kind of what this is all about. And this particular class, again, I just want to focus on being a divine instrument. So I'm going to kind of start off with a little thing here. I'd like to start off with the Sufi invocation. So anyone that knows the invocation is welcome to join with us. Towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. So whomever you feel guides you or directs you in this life or beyond that you'd like to have kind of close with you at this moment. That's what the invocation is really about. It's about bringing in what makes us feel like we can open ourselves up more. So a little bit on being a divine instrument. I'm going to start off reading a little passage here and then give a little, just a small commentary about it. And then at the end of these few little segments, I would really like to get everybody's comments, thoughts. I'd like to throw ideas back and forth. I'd like to really see where everybody's head's at with some of the things that I'm saying, if it resonates with you or not. Very open to discussion. So this comes from the Sufi message, volume 8. There's 14 volumes that Hazrat Khan wrote, which were mostly lectures and things that he gave that were dictated and then later turned into book format. But this is from volume 8. And this is about divine impulse. One may ask how sages and thinkers have distinguished the divine impulse among the different impulses that arise in the heart of man. First, we must understand what the word divine means. Divine means a state of perfection. This state is experienced by God through man. In other words, when man has risen to the stage of development where he can be the perfect instrument of God. When nothing of his own being stands in the way of the direct impulse that comes from within, that spirit may be called perfect. That which is most precious, that which is the purpose of man's life, is to arise at that state of perfection where he can be the perfect instrument of God. One of the things that really jumps out to me there, divine means a state of perfection. This state is experienced by God through man. And that's really what being a divine instrument is, when you realize that the divine comes through us and works through us. And what we experience in this life is God experiencing life through us. He's experiencing his own creation through what he's created, because we've opened ourselves to allow that to come through and be expressed. And that to me puts great responsibility on what I say and what I play or what I do expressively in all aspects of my life. My teacher that I recently became a healing conductor for the Sufi order. I did about a year and a half of training with Debbie Tide, who's the head of the North American order. And I totally lost my train of thought there. Lost where I was going. It'll come back. It was about that state of perfection and about, realizing that God really does experience life through us. I wish I could remember what she said. We'll come back to it. So that understanding that what we experience is God experiencing life through us. It just came back. You go to Starbucks and you're standing in line. You walk up to the barista at Starbucks and you order something to drink. It's usually just the person at Starbucks that you see all the time or that you don't know. And it's just a Starbucks employee to you most of the time. Next time you go to Starbucks, walk in, walk up to that barista as if you're walking up to God and ordering your coffee from God. Try to see God in that other person as you order your coffee from them. And your experience of ordering coffee will be quite different. And that's really kind of, that's really the whole thing of experiencing, God experiencing life through us, and that's really what being a divine instrument is. You have to allow yourself to be the instrument for the sound to resonate. If I go over to that guitar and I put my hand on it, or I cover the sound hole and I play the strings, nothing comes through because I blocked its ability to resonate. I've blocked its channel of output, because it's stiff now. It's hardened to a point where there's no resonance, there's no vibration, nothing to push it out. So that's where being a divine instrument really comes into play. Moving on to that, ironically, this weekend we celebrate Krishna's birthday, for those that understand the Hindu tradition. I had a feeling she'd end up on that. So this comes from volume 9, The Unity of Religious Ideals, one of my favorite books. Really talks about all the different religions and how they are unified and how they can all come together to really have a same common thread of understanding. So this is about the heart being the flute of God. And this is, again, from volume 9, also from the Sufi message of Caravan. Krishna is pictured in Hindu symbology with a crown of peacock feathers playing the flute. Krishna is the ideal of divine love, the God of love. And the divine love expresses itself by entering into man and filling his whole being. I'm going to read that over again. And the divine love expresses itself by entering into man and filling his whole being. Therefore, the flute of man is the human heart. And a heart which is made hollow will become a flute for the God of love to play upon. When the heart is not empty, in other words, when there is no scope in the heart, there is no place for love. Anybody that might not be know Sufism probably know Rumi. A lot of people know Rumi. Well, here's what Rumi has to say about it. Rumi, the great Sufi poet of Persia, explains this idea more clearly. He says the pains and sorrows the soul experiences through life, the pains and sorrows the soul experiences through life are like holes made in a reed flute. And it is by making these holes that a player makes the flute out of a reed. This means that the heart of man is the first reed, and the sufferings and pain it goes through make it a flute, which can then be used by God as an instrument for music that he constantly wishes to produce. But as every reed is not a flute, so every heart is not an instrument. As the reed can be made into a flute, so the human heart can be turned into an instrument and can be offered to the God of love. It is the human heart, this is my signature on my email. It is the human heart which becomes the harp of the angels. It is the human heart which is known as the lute of Orpheus. It was on the model of the heart of man that the first instrument of music was made, and no earthly instrument can produce the music which the heart produces, raising the mortal soul to immortality. So when we think about creating music from the heart, we think of what I have to say, what I'm feeling, what my emotions are, and that type of thing. And that's okay. We have to express ourselves musically, and I'm not saying that we should never write songs for commerce, and never write songs for personal enjoyment or expression, or for someone else, right? Love song for someone. I mean, those things are important, and those are expressions of who we are, and should all be part of that. But when you really see the heart as an instrument, that's when we can kind of use this expression through those pains and those sufferings that we go through. I don't know if anybody's really familiar with a reed flute. I have a couple here. I'm not a flautist. We have a couple. We have one here. But this is just a reed. This is from Belarus, I believe. It's just plucked right out of the ground. And they cut the end, they burn a couple holes in it, and you can blow through it and get a pretty natural sound. Maybe. One of them might work. So, dogs love this. So you think of something so simple, and there's a whole Rumi poem about the reed being pulled from the reed bed, and lamenting, returning home, and wanting to be home with, and it was turned into a flute, and it sings this joyous cry of thank you for making me a flute. But again, This really represents, the hollowness, the emptiness that you have. You have just a reed, nothing coming through it, but when it's plucked from its home and then it's cut and then it's burnt, these holes in it, whether it's rays of the sun or whether it's someone physically did this to it. Through those sufferings and through all this torture that this little reed went through, it now can produce a beautiful sun. And the human heart is just so much like that. And so when you think of all the suffering that we go through, all the pain that we go through, all the difficulties in life, trials that we go through, having this notion and understanding that every time the heart's being scalded and burned, it's opening something up for something to come through it that can come back out. And they can play that beautiful music. You're opening yourself up for that divine note to ring out within you. Because we all have our own divine note. People say, how do you find it? There's a lot of different ways to find what's right for you. And it could change. It could change as your personality changes, as your demeanor changes, as your life experience changes. So that's something there. So moving on now from the idea of opening yourself, and the first passage was really about realizing that we are a divine instrument. And the second is really about how do you be a divine instrument. It's by opening the heart and by really emptying yourself so that you can be filled with something more. I have to empty myself of all the things that I think I have to do musically to impress others and to be successful and to be, able to have a career and things like that. But at the same time, I can hold on to a thread of integrity and I can hold on to that idea that I'm connected to something higher the whole time that I'm still doing that and infuse that much more into it. So what I really teach a lot of, and what we'll get into a lot more, this is really basic, covering over, kind of the idea and the concepts. But I like to really get into more of intention and how we use the intention behind our music and our words and sound in general. When you put, Jonathan Goldman's probably one of the best known sound healers, sound therapy guys, and he says vibration plus intention equals healing. And in all my training, in all my studies, and everything that I've ever done, in any spiritual training ever, has all had that same thread of truth, that same understanding that your intention, along with the vibration, brings the healing. So whether it's a Buddhist prayer, a Hindu prayer, a Muslim prayer, a Jewish prayer, when you say those words with the intention of reaching the absolute that prayer is being prayed to, without looking at, well, this prayer is for these people, or this prayer is for those people, or this is for this particular type of music, or this particular sound. Just opening yourself up to say that prayer and let it come through is what really brings the beauty and the magic of the prayer. And that's really what, the dances of universal peace, if anybody's familiar with those are, I think, really founded on that idea of you come together as a group and you want to experience a little bit of the bliss that everybody else feels in their own walk, in their own faith, in their own belief. And by opening yourself to doing that together as a group, you bring so much more energy into it. It just brings some amazing things happen at these dances. And so anyway, that's kind of about the first part is realizing we're a divine instrument, realizing that opening the heart allows something more to come through, allows us to be played as an instrument. And then we have to keep that instrument in tune. Once we might have that realization or that idea, that concept that comes to us, and then it's like, okay, great, I get it, and I understand. And then, next couple times we sit down with our instrument, we can kind of do that. And then you try to do it before a gig, and somebody's screaming at you, and they just threw your amp off the stage and all this other stuff, and you're all in a panic. You can't get in that attunement all the time, so you have to take the time to really just refocus and just understand that we have that within us. So keeping the divine instrument in tune. This is from volume 4, Mental Purification and Healing. If an instrument is not kept in proper tune, if it is knocked about by everyone who comes and handled by everyone, then it gets out of order. The body is an instrument, the most sacred instrument, an instrument which God Himself has made for His divine purpose. If it is kept in tune, and the strings are not allowed to become loose, then the instrument becomes the means of that harmony for which God created man. So with that, we're supposed to be in tune. We're supposed to be harmonious. We're supposed to feel that we're vibrating at a level, at a place that is